Hi, my name is Lauren. I am a victim of extreme domestic violence. When I was 19, I met a 31-year-old man, 12 years my senior, and very quickly got married. By the fourth year of our marriage, he had isolated me in a desert in an RV for 7 months, where he physically, sexually, and psychologically tortured and tormented me. He brainwashed me, he trafficked me, and this is the story of how I ultimately got out of that marriage. To tell that story, I want to give the cliff notes of what happened immediately after the desert and up until the point that I was able to leave. This is really a story of how I got myself unbrainwashed enough to leave. On the desert, I had become very brainwashed. I even found journal entries recently where I was speaking to my ex being God, being Jesus, and that he had created me. Honestly, I had forgotten that my mind went that far, but it was very cult-like. And outside of that, the brainwashing really consisted of my ex making me believe that something was very wrong with me. He told me that he was trying to break me free of whatever was wrong with me by every other method available. By loving me, by being supportive, by being kind and being patient. None of which he was actually doing because he had been psychologically, sexually, and emotionally abusive for years. But that's what he was explaining to me he was doing to help fix me, especially to help me become a better wife and a respectful wife. And I think he targeted that so much because being a good wife was so important to me, and I had been brainwashed into believing that being a good wife was my mission in life. I took it very seriously. I would read books on how to be a good partner. I joined groups, studied, paid for online courses. Being a good wife was very important to me, and he weaponized that. And he told me that the only option left was to beat this out of me. He spun it as if it was geared towards helping me. And somehow he got me to the point where I was on board with this. I thought I deserved it. I thought I needed it. And I couldn't really reconcile that what he was doing was actually wrong. On one hand, I knew it would look bad from the outside. I was instructed not to tell police or what to tell police if I was ever questioned about my bruises. But I was thinking it was more so that they wouldn't understand, not that the abuse was wrong. I was completely terrified and I was very confused a lot of the time, but I also was brainwashed, and I thought that he was more spiritually advanced than I was. I thought he had access to things that I didn't have access to, and he knew the way. And a lot of that thinking is also what led to the sexual abuse or supported the sexual abuse. But it took time for me to understand that what he was doing was incredibly wrong, incredibly sinister, abusive to the largest degrees. Ultimately, he had laid this groundwork where I was essentially worshiping him. I thought that my purpose in life was to serve him. And unfortunately, the people that were involved in our life, from the police to my therapist to friends and family at the time, were all very reinforcing of what he was pushing forward. So I didn't have anything rooted in reality to help me see clearer or to help pull me out. And I'm very grateful that I was able to find my own way out. So when we left the desert, again, he hightailed us out of there because he thought a secret army was coming after him. Thankfully, being in society helped me start to wake up. Isolation really does a number on you. And being in society, I saw more clearly immediately. Not fully clear, but a stark difference from the hour and a half prior when I was on the desert with him to now being around people. I could see more clearly. We were now in society around people, and he was still behaving insanely, crazy, unhinged, out of touch with reality. And I was now having to protect society from him and protect him from getting into some serious trouble. And that gave me glimpses to help me wake up. And what I was really having to protect society from was he believed that there was a secret gangbang society. And he thought that everyone was operating in this secret gangbang society except for him, that we were all a part of it and we weren't letting him in. And he was pissed about that. And he also thought that I was involved in it and I wasn't letting him in, and that was a trigger for abuse. Before we even made it out of Nevada, he was driving on the wrong side of the road, thinking that that was somehow a form of communication to the society. He was approaching people's houses. He was approaching people's windows. He tried to enter a high school. He saw drywall that had fallen inside of an establishment, and he thought that that was gifted cocaine for him. He was just completely out of touch with reality, and it was clear for me to see now that he was acting this way in front of other people. But unfortunately, we even had an interaction with an officer at this point, and the officer had known my ex because my ex liked to befriend officers. So they already knew each other, and my ex was acting absolutely insane, clear as day insane. And it was like 5 a.m. And this officer literally was just like, ooh, and just like backed up and then got in his vehicle. Like he was like, this is crazy. I'm just going to leave that there. Instead of trying to investigate the situation, make sure I was safe, nothing. Once we made it to Texas to go visit his mom, we were still living in the RV for a little while. And again, he thought the entire society was operating inside this underground secret gangbang society, and he was hell-bent on getting in it. I watched this man speak to a cashier who simply said something to the effect of, "Hi, how was your day?" And he responded with, "Aha, I know what you really mean," because he thought that everyone was speaking in code. He thought that Girl Scouts outside of a grocery store selling Girl Scout cookies were for sale and that their parents had put them there as an offering. He would leave the RV naked in the middle of the night because he would hear something like an owl hooting, and he would think that that was the signal for the secret gangbang, and he would go out and try to find it. I was trying to keep him inside the RV, somehow control the situation, and he just wasn't having it. I was not able to get a grasp on this at all. He was not allowing me to do anything. And in fact, he was just super pissed that I was keeping him from the gangbangs. So at this point, I was like, holy shit, you are a danger. This is scary. You're completely unhinged. You're walking into people's yards naked in Texas in the middle of the night. And it helped me start to wake up. At the same time, though, I was still thinking he was the man that he was telling me he was. I was thinking this is a man that loves me, that cares about me, that is my protector. And on one of these nights, I sat him down and I said, "You're scaring me. I'm really scared, and you're scaring me." And he laughed in my face. And I said to him, "This is not how my husband would react to me telling him I'm scared." And he continued to laugh in my face. I tried to get away from him by just going to the back room in the RV and closing myself in there, but he wouldn't leave me alone. I tried to leave at one point, and ultimately this night turned into a long fiasco that resulted in us being at his mom's house at about 3 a.m. When we got to his mom's house, his crazy did not stop. It did not slow down. He was trying to get me to have sex with his disabled brother in front of his mom. He was trying to get his disabled brother to do cocaine. He kept trying to leave the house, and the three of us, myself, his mom, and his brother, were trying to keep him in, and he turned it into like a fun game of like tag, where he was running around the house and laughing and having a grand old time. Meanwhile, literally pulling ginormous boogers out of his nose and like smearing them around his mother's house. At the same time, he would go through episodes of briefly but heavily crying and then going back to laughing. And he was even begging to go to a mental hospital at this point as well. And that's where he ended up in the morning. Around 9 a.m., we drove him to a mental hospital, and there, in front of his mother, he was trying to offer me up to other men there. He also, in front of a male nurse, or speaking to a male nurse, and in front of his mom and in front of me in a room together, he told the nurse that he had shot at me. The nurse did nothing. His mom did nothing. I used this mental hospital stay as an opportunity to move us into his mom's house. I could no longer be alone with him, and I needed some backup and some support. Little did I know that was essentially me walking into the lion's den, because his mom did not offer support. She consistently left me with him and went on cruises. This man got out of the mental hospital after like 48 hours. It wasn't even a full 72. And he was pissed. Absolutely pissed. He also claimed that all the patients in there sang a song to him that was like, "If God was one of us," or something. If anyone was in the mental hospital with him, please confirm or deny. But he was pissed, and his mom left for a cruise immediately after, left me alone with him after she had been involved in the abuse over the phone in the desert, witnessed the abuse firsthand, his psychosis and his insanity firsthand, and still left me alone with him. Shortly thereafter, he came down with a mysterious spinal injury and experienced on and off paralysis and was bedridden for 4 months, which meant I was also bedridden with him. At this point, I'm actively starting to wake up and acknowledge what had just happened to me on the desert. But I'm processing all of this in bed right next to the man that did it all. And I also wasn't allowed to show emotion. I wasn't allowed to question anything. All of that was dangerous. And at the same time, I'm getting forced to have sit-down meetings with him and his mother where they berate me and tell me that I'm the problem. I remember at the time going through like a heartbreak of wanting to talk to my partner about things that I was struggling with inside of our relationship, and grieving and being very, very sad that I was not able to do so, that wasn't an option. And it's crazy because that's such a minor way to put it. Like, I was thinking like, I'm so sad I can't talk to my husband about our problems, but our problems were him literally torturing me. But I had to be a completely supportive wife. If I cried, it meant that I was trying to make him look like a bad guy intentionally. And anything that wasn't 100% supportive was a trigger for more abuse. And in this bedroom, I experienced, I want to say the worst, but it wasn't quite the worst, up there, a continuation of really awful sexual abuse and rapes. And I would cry. I would be so overstimulated because not only would this man sexually abuse me in very, very deranged ways, he would also force me to watch brutal rapes, porn that was very evident, girls drugged and uncomfortable and being abused themselves. And he would force me to watch those at the same time. And he would always try to push for a dialogue about what he had me watch. He wanted me to speak on it. He wanted me to identify what was hot about it. And all of his sexual abuse was geared towards training me to be a sex slave. He voiced that very, very frequently. It was very deliberate. He was very intentional about it. He was wanting me to have sex with many, 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 many people. And he was constantly trying to train me to be a good sex slave. And while I was stuck in that room with him, this continued, but his deranged thoughts on pedophilia increased. And it was no longer hypotheticals like it had been on the desert, which was bad and terrifying enough. But now he was talking about specific children, like a child who lived next door to his mom's house, young child, like not even toddler, young. And that was terrifying. So I'm starting to wake up because these things are so evidently terrifying. But at the same time, I'm still being extremely psychologically and sexually abused. His mom is enabling, encouraging, and also psychologically abusing me. And I just never have a moment for my mind, a space for my mind to have peace and stability and clarity enough to really figure out what was going on. And I was just so stuck in survival that I didn't have a clear mind enough. And there were times I was just so overstimulated in that room from being raped and being forced to hear about his deranged fantasies, him wanting me to verbally fantasize with him wanting me to verbally talk about these rapes that he was forcing me to watch. And I would just plead with him, can I just go to the bathroom for a moment to try to compose myself? And he wouldn't let me do that. What's interesting is the physical abuse stopped after the desert. He wasn't able to abuse me now that we're in public and in society in the same ways that he was able to when he had me completely isolated. So the physical abuse stopped, but the sexual and the psychological certainly never did. And don't get me wrong, there were times I was able to leave the room. I wasn't physically locked in there 24/7. I was able to go for runs in the morning, but on a route that I was allowed to go on, which was literally just his neighborhood. I was allowed to go run errands. I tried to get a job at one point, but he made sure that that was very, very short-lived. So I wasn't completely just locked in a room, but I was spending the vast majority of my time each and every day stuck in a bedroom at his mom's house with him. So after about 4 months of his spinal injury and on and off paralysis, he miraculously recovered when his mom offered to get us a little Airbnb. So we moved into an Airbnb less than 5 minutes away from her house. It was a little house. At this same time, my cat, who I had for 20 years at this point, my little kitty cat who had been through absolutely everything with me. I found him when I was walking home from school when I was 6 years old, and he was a kitten. His name is Nunu. I named him after the vacuum cleaner in the Teletubbies, and he had 4 other litter mates, and they all found homes. But this little dude, every time it was adoption night at the shelter, he got sick, and so I ended up keeping him. And Nunu is absolutely my guardian angel. And my tattoo is WWNND, which is what would Nunu do. And I love that kitty cat with all of my heart. He passed away in April of 2025 at the age of 22. And he gave me 2 extra years out of my abuse with him. He carried me through those years of me fleeing and dealing with a whole other battle with the legal system and being so terrified and staying up all night and peering out my blinds. And he stuck around for those years too. But while we were living in his mom's house, my kitty cat got diagnosed with cancer. He started having nosebleeds and throwing up blood, and I didn't think he had much time left, and he helped me get out. His sickness helped me get out because it was hard for me to see when I was being abused. But when my cat was being affected by the abuse, and my cat is now sick and needs protection, it was very easy for me to be like, get the fuck away from us. And that helped massively. So now we're in this new house, and immediately, night 1, this man does his crazy fucking shit. Night 1, he starts getting telepathic downloads that tell him I'm cheating on him. He starts acting just absolutely crazy. And I was so ready, like, I'm ashamed to say it, but I was so ready to like have a fresh start. Like I walked into that house with a positive mindset. I was like, let's be a happy couple and let's, unite and let's start fresh and maybe I can put all this abuse behind me. I was willing to do that in my brainwashed state. And night one, he was just absolutely crazy. And I started to speak up for myself and put my foot down. And I made him leave. I kicked him out. And I continuously, over the next few months, would speak up. We were sleeping in different rooms, thank goodness. And I continuously started to speak up. But unfortunately, every time I spoke up, I could maintain my ground for a few hours, maybe a couple days max. A couple days is pushing it. And then it would somehow, like, he would push back so hard with his abuse that I would eventually yield, and then I would have to apologize, and I would have to repent, and that meant I would be punished sexually. And, that cycle didn't stop. But I did have my wits about me enough to put my foot down more and have us sleep in different rooms. And I frequently locked me and my cat away from him and would say, like, I will not allow you to bring stress to this household. I will not allow you to bring stress to my cat. And thankfully, I know people will ask this question. I know it's very, very common in abuse. I don't think that he ever abused my cat. I do think that he let him out one time to have him run away. And I also considered, was he poisoning my cat because he was so obsessed with this poisoning stuff? And honestly, I don't know. I do think that my cat got sick as a result of what happened on the desert. Was that stress related or was he being poisoned? I don't know. Honestly, I have a hard time jumping on board of him being poisoned. But could we put it past this guy? No, definitely not. And during this time, I was also allowed to make a friend. And I made friends with a woman named Ruth. Love you, Ruth. And me and Ruth were both going through abusive marriages, but neither of us were talking about it with one another. We both thought that each other had great marriages, actually. But we just had the support of friendship. And that really made all the difference in helping me get out, because I just had a sliver of a life outside of him, outside of this manipulative, abusive marriage, a sliver of a life where I wasn't in a environment geared towards brainwashing me. And that helped give me strength. Even though I was not even talking about what I was enduring at all, it gave me strength because I just had love and support and friendship. And at the same time, since we had moved into this house, my ex started to spend a lot of time outside of the house. He got involved with a strange group of older men. He told me if he came home with money, not to ask him where it came from. He was really driving all over Texas all the time, and not telling me what he was doing. And honestly, at the time, I thought it was weird. I thought he was insane. I thought he was out of touch with reality. And I also really appreciated the fact that he was nowhere near me. So I was just trying to enjoy my life, enjoy my time with my kitty cat, protect my kitty cat, take care of my kitty cat. I also got bunnies at this time. This is how I met Ruth. Ruth had the bunnies. And I, formed these awesome relationships with these little bunnies and was teaching them tricks and was just loving on them and enjoying that. And at the same time, I was spending a lot of time asking myself, is this what love is? And I remember asking Ruth, if love was something that just happens to you, or if love was a choice. And I wasn't necessarily actively thinking about how to leave. But I was just acknowledging more that things weren't right. And really the hardest thing for me was I was so committed to my vows. I was so committed to, through health or sickness, I thought that my husband was deeply sick because something did drastically change once we got on the desert, aka once he had me isolated like that. But because I mean, like, the drug use was the same before the desert and on the desert. So it's like, what was the thing that changed? I thought it could be late onset schizophrenia because schizophrenia runs in his family. So I definitely thought it was late onset schizophrenia. And even after the desert, I like beat myself up. I was like, did I handle my husband's crisis correctly with enough care? I beat myself up over getting brainwashed into also believing some of his crazy psychosis beliefs. And I beat myself up because I was like, shit, I went along with it. And was that me being a bad wife? But ultimately, there was no going against him. I had tried to go against him for months and months and months and months and months and months and months with not feeding into these ideas. And the abuse was just so bad. And then he got into my brain so much. But it was really important to me that I was a good wife. And I thought he might have been sick. And so I needed to stand by him. And I was committed to being married, to being a wife. I didn't want to get divorced. And so that was really, really hard for me to reconcile. It really wasn't on the table because I was so committed to my vows. And then it was just a random day. It was Memorial Day in May of 2023. We had spent the morning putting flags up at Fort Sam Houston Cemetery. And he was a real dick to his mom that morning. But me and him were having an okay day. Once we got home around noon, he took a bath, which he frequently does. He's a big bath guy. And I sat next to him on the ground, the bathroom floor, while he was in the bath, as I frequently did. And he started to tell me about this man that he had been speaking to. And this is not one of the men that he was going off doing whatever he was doing with. This was a man he had a relationship with over the phone. And leading up to this day, he had been taking phone calls in the middle of the night, and I would hear him in the hallway on the phone. And I had been asking him, who was that? Who were you talking to? And he would never tell me. And this day in the bathtub, he just said, I want to tell you who I was talking to. And I was like, okay. And he told me that a scam caller had called him some weeks back and had asked him for money for an orphanage in Africa. And my ex caught on that this guy was a scammer, but then decided to befriend him. Who knows what of this is truth, if any of it. But this is what I was told. He befriended this man and decided to help him with his business plan, which is actually hilarious when you think about it. Because, like, what? You were helping a scammer be a better scammer? Says the scammer. But I knew I had to be a supportive wife. Like, it was not an option for me not to be a supportive wife. Every time that I questioned anything, I got abused for it. So I'm in my head at this moment, I'm like, okay, this all sounds really crazy, but I need to be supportive. So I was like, okay, baby, I'm glad you made a friend, you know, like trying to be as normal as I could about it. But then he said, and I want to send him money. And I just couldn't keep my mouth shut because we were completely broke. $100,000 in credit card debt in my name that would have never, I had that amount of credit available because my credit was so strong. I always use my credit cards just to pay them off fully at the end of every single month. And now I had $100,000 in credit card debt in my name. Both of our moms were supporting us financially. And he wanted to send money to this scammer out in Africa for a fake orphanage. absolutely not. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. And I just said, no. And that started basically, minus the physical abuse, all of the craziness that happened in the desert that day, all over again. He wanted to see my phone. And this was something he did frequently. He would confiscate my phone and he would go through it and he would say that the most random things on it were me cheating. Like one day he told me that my period tracking app was me cheating. So I knew the moment he wanted my phone that this was just going to be absolute nonsense all over again. So I gave him my phone and I just went and I took a nap. And I fell asleep so fast, I think my whole being and brain and everything was just like, fuck this. I fell right to sleep. And I woke up to his mom on speakerphone and him next to me in the bed and his mom yelling something like, you knew she was like this, something like that. And then my ex kicked me out. And I took my phone and I happily left that house. And I drove to Ruth's house, and I still didn't tell her what was going on, but enough was enough for me at that point. Enough was enough. Like, after the desert, things were never as bad as they were on the desert, but there were time periods where they were very similar. Or I guess what I would say is they were never as bad because they weren't consistent over months. But there would be days where it would be just as bad, minus the physical abuse. And the culmination of me slowly waking up to the abuse over the past several months, me seeing his insanity, me protecting my cat, me spending time alone, me having a sliver of a life outside of him, finally, it was just one day. Enough is enough. And I went back to him the next day when he told me I could come home, and I sat down on the floor in front of him, and I told him that we weren't working and that I wanted to take a break. And he was pretty calm. He was pretty accepting, actually, of this. And then I saw him fully turn off his crazy. Like, 100% dial it back. He became the person that I met back in 2016. He was exactly the man that, was my trainer. He was this guy again. And I remember thinking that was the craziest thing because now I had made my choice. Like, when I came back that day and told him we weren't working, like, my mind was made up. There was no chance I was going back. And to see this man turn off his crazy, one, I was like, you're disgusting trying to pull this like manipulative bullshit right now. And two, oh my gosh, this is a choice. This is a choice because you just turned off your crazy, like fully, like 100% turned it off. And I started to get more fearful of him than I had ever been because my brain was awake at this point. Not fully, but awake. Like I still had not fully digested what had happened to me on the desert. But my brain was awake enough to know this man is really, really scary and dangerous. And I asked him to leave while I got some things together over like the course of like 10 days or 2 weeks. And he did, but he made a huge fuss about it, like he had nowhere to go. He had his mom's house, he had the RV to go to, and we even got an Airbnb, but he said he went there and didn't like the floors, so we lost all that money. And he would come in and out intermittently during this time, and every time he would show up, I was just so scared. I was so scared, but I knew I needed I knew that I couldn't show him my fear and show him how done I was, because I needed to get out and get into my own place safely and with as minimal conflict as I possibly could. So I just tried to keep my distance, tried to keep things cordial. And my mom helped me by setting me up with a little apartment. I moved out and I asked for 2 weeks of silence, and he did not adhere to that at all. He was calling and trying to communicate with me off different phone numbers, off email, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, I think. And then he found, I didn't even know you could chat on Google. Like, every way that he could possibly try to communicate with me, he was trying to communicate with me. And I just disappeared to the best of my abilities. I went completely silent. I was in and out of rental cars. I was hiding my vehicle. I was in and out of hotels. I had cameras up everywhere. I was silent online. I just went completely silent and I went into hiding, and it took me about 10 months to start coming out of hiding. I also moved 10 times over the course of 2 years in this time period, because he was just absolutely insane. He was not leaving me alone. I had not yet spoken out about his abuse, and he preemptively made a He Too movement. He preemptively started to do a smear campaign, turned a whole Facebook group against me, claiming that I was probably buried somewhere. He would show up where I was. I mean, it was just absolute craziness for a long time. A long time. And it wasn't long after I moved out that I remember sitting on my couch and being like, holy shit, I was very, very, very badly abused. And then I stumbled upon one of the recordings that he had taken on my phone. And then I started digging for any evidence that I might have. And everything just got more real once I started to recognize what I had just gone through, what I was actively going through, what this man was capable of, how dangerous he was, how out of touch with reality he was. He used to think that I was telepathically, like, being friendly with him, that telepathically I wanted to get back together, and I was asking him to come over and hang out and spend time with me. And when that didn't match in reality, he would become very dangerous, very scary, be very, very upset with me, and was harassing me, was circling my house at all hours, was just really scary for quite a long time. And it took me about 10 months to feel comfortable enough to start leaving my house a little bit. Besides moving, I had moved several times. Besides flying to Nevada to file police reports, besides going to the police station in San Antonio, I really never left my house. But I was staying up terrified 24/7, digging through evidence and peering out the lines. And trying to get support, dealing with the police, dealing with lawyers, dealing with advocates, dealing with Nevada. Honestly, probably hands down the scariest time of my life, because on the desert, I was brainwashed and I wasn't always aware of how scary what was going on was. I was definitely living in a state of constant terror, but I was also in a high level of survival mode, and I was fawning and dissociating. And now I was very awake and living with the threat of this man who was actively possibly trying to hunt me down. I mean, definitely trying to hunt me down, but trying to kill me. I don't know, was actively pursuing me to do whatever he wanted. It was just a really, really scary time. But that's my story of how I got out. Honestly, it's difficult for me to share sometimes because I'm still digesting and processing my abuse, and I have an ever evolving understanding of what I've gone through. So sometimes I worry about sharing and then having a difference of perspective later. For some reason that makes me nervous or scared that I'm not portraying everything that I want to portray in the most accurate way, because I know that I will continue to gather a more in-depth understanding of what I went through. But thanks for listening. That's my story of how I got out of my incredibly abusive marriage. And 3 years later, I'm still dealing with him. He's actively suing me, trying to silence me. I'm still pursuing charges against him out of Nevada. Finally, the Nye County Sheriff's Department, after years of negligence and incompetence, are finally ready to move forward with pressing charges against him. So that's a hallelujah. But, I'm still not entirely free of him yet, because I still have to go through all of this and deal with him in court and everything. But I am a million times happier. I came out like me, honestly. Like I used to say in therapy, it feels like I just got spit out and I'm myself, because somehow through going through all of that and getting out and having the clarity that my intuition was right the whole time, I just merged with myself. And so truly I am happy. Of course, I deal with different, the ways that the trauma comes up for me, but getting out was the best thing I could have done. And I'm so glad I made it out with my life and my sanity. And I'm just super happy to be here. I'm very honored to get to share with you. And thanks for being here as well.